welcome. It's one of our last Paris Fashion Week broadcasts, so it's a very sad day, but a great day also because we're talking about Alexander McQueen, and we're going to be talking about a wonderful presentation which is obviously done by Sarah Burton, and it's a very special one because it's a very small, intimate presentation that we'll be discussing. And I have a fabulous set of panellists with me from all across different areas of fashion who will introduce themselves, starting with Laura.
I'm Laura Weir, the Fashion Features Director at the Sunday Times Style.
I'm Jackie Dixon, a stylist turned photographer.
And I'm Pam Hogg, most known for my fashion.
I'm Shonagh Marshall and I'm Assistant Curator at Somerset House.
Before we talk about McQueen, I want to start by asking what have been your highlights of the season so far. Pam, tell us about, because you've been busy this season, so talk to me about that.
Well, I've seen nothing, and straight after my show I had to actually go back into the studio to finish things off because I was literally still stitching as the first garment went on.
It's the best way to be though.
Well, I would rather it wasn't like that, to be honest with you, because I work totally alone. It's not the best position to be in, but it's how it is at the moment, and with two students who arrive, like the one was there like 2 months before and the other one was like a little bit later than that. So every single thing I made myself with the help of these two girls. So it's quite crazy. Yeah. And I mistimed it a little bit because I had 2 other projects to do in between it. So I was left quite broken actually at the end of it. So I haven't seen anything at all, but this morning I actually got a bit scared, and I thought, oh my God, I don't know anything about fashion. I mean, I know, I don't know anything about the history of fashion. I know about clothes, dressing up, I know about the feel of fabric, I love clothes, but I've only just recently realised that I would gain an awful lot more if I did actually know and did some research, and I actually feel it's the right time, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think actually coming on this panel, even though it was just this morning that I tried to sort of log in, I actually, because I knew Lee, and I went to quite a few of his shows, but I thought I'd go in and actually have a look, and I realised I knew virtually nothing of his collection. I was astonished at, I couldn't get into the first one, so I think I saw the second one, which I'd never ever seen before. And I mean, I was absolutely blown away. And this is the thing with his work. It is truly awesome, and you're sitting with your mouth open. You're like, wow, it is truly fantastic. And I actually want to go back and look at everything now, and also to see what Sarah has done. And I remember thinking, when Lee died, and the tragedy of all that, and then the mere thought of someone else taking his place was just abysmal. And when I didn't know Sarah, I've not actually met Sarah before, and I just thought, my God, what a task for someone to take on, and how to have taken on the mantle was one of the bravest things you could ever do. And I think she did it incredibly well, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about her. I would love to meet her. I think what she has been doing, I mean, the little that I've seen of it has just been incredible.
And yeah, as you say, it's completely correct. Everyone has been so sort of supportive and so impressed by her, I think by her modesty, but also by the way in which she's kind of really seamlessly taken his heritage but put in a very different stamp on it. A lot of people, I don't know if this is perhaps a little bit simplistic, but have said that she's taken it in a much more feminine direction. What do you think, Laura, about what she's done since because we were talking about
well, she was with him, I think she worked with him for 16 years. And I think she was the person sort of behind the scenes that was, I think he mainly focused on the shows and the theatre and the big productions and the absolutely, as you say, awesome designs. And then Sarah was behind the scenes sort of interpreting that perhaps for more of the commercial side of the business. So she always had a great handle on what he did. I'm not sure, I mean, her underwater collection was all about femininity. So in that respect, I think that's right. I mean, that was just about I mean, she wanted to create something that was the most feminine that a woman could ever feel, that a woman could ever wear, and that was her, her goal for that collection, and I think she succeeded in that. But I just think she's done a phenomenal job. She's done it with such grace and elegance. She doesn't talk about herself very much. She keeps it very focused on the brand, which is which is important when you're taking over someone else's legacy, I suppose. I just think she's done a stellar job.
And do you think she's been very wise to sort of pull back on the idea of the sort of the spectacle and the theatre of the fashion show? Because obviously, and she's made points in interviews, that's not what she's about, that's Lee's legacy. How have you been pleased to see? Do you think it's appropriate that she's done that?
Well, I would have absolutely. I've never had the privilege of going to one of Lee's shows, and I would have. If there's one thing that I could have done, I would have absolutely loved to have seen just that production and the theatre and the atmosphere, and to see how a show can move you, and beyond the clothes, to experience that whole message would have been phenomenal. But if that's not her vibe, so to speak, if that's not how she feels like, the way that she wants the collections to manifest, then that's fine. I know that spirit is something you can't manufacture. I don't think you can fake that sort of want to create such an impact. So if it's not there, then she's doing it her own way, and I think she has to forge her own way. She can't totally live in the shadow.
Well, the thing is, with Lee, he was a visionary, and what he was doing was not just the clothes; it was everything. It was encompassing absolutely everything, and it for him it couldn't be just the clothes without the whole thing. I mean, the ideas that he had for all of this. I mean, that it was spectacular, and it was part of it. It wouldn't have been enough for him, but for her take on it is the clothes, and I think it would have been wrong for her to even try that, because it wouldn't have probably been in her nature. Maybe later on she might do, and she'll do it in her own way, which is the right thing to do. But that was Lee's. I think that was Lee's domain.
And I think we had an interesting taste of it with McQueen. Was it 11/12 autumn winter with Kirsten McMenemy in a house at the end of the catwalk, and her pulling a rope and leaves, and I thought that was quite interesting because it was almost a nod to, well, I could do this, but I don't want to.
So she actually did do something.
Yeah, well, I don't think she's got complete creative control over McQueen. I think they probably, is it a guy called Simon?
Yeah, they have,
and so he works as the designer for that collection, but I just thought it was interesting as a brand, McQueen as a brand, and as the younger Diffusion label, to do something, a show that was so kind of reminiscent of
and the
men's
as well. The recent men's, there was that sense, people kind of made a lot of the return to London, but also they made a lot of the return of the spectacle in the way that men's was done, in a very kind of haunting, creepy way. It was sat in these different rooms, and there was something very sinister about it. And I think, as you say, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, actually, because it has been quite a clever route to keep the women's almost slightly pure and stripped back, and then be a bit more experimental in the.
I do think of her as somebody who's continuing his legacy instead of trying to make it into her brand, which I think is highly commendable. She was his intern, which I think is amazing. And as you said, 16 years, and he obviously trusted her implicitly. There's great stories of him just sort of starting something and say, you finish it, and her being petrified and, ringing her mother, just saying, oh my God, I can't do this. And I just think, to entrust somebody to do that is so wonderful. And I think it's like she's really paying homage, and there's a huge amount of respect by just continuing the legacy and honouring him, instead of saying, right, well, he was theatrical, I'm going to do it too. She's I think,
and that would be simplistic.
Exactly. It's very respectful. It's very humble, and I think the talent shines through, and that's what everybody is praising.
And I think the fact that you're saying that she was an intern and she was with him for so long, I mean, he must have trusted her to the utmost. To have someone who you can rely on, that knows your next move, must have been incredible for him. Because that takes up so much time, and she must have. I mean, she was by far the best person, the only person that really could have taken this on.
But I thought it was such a lovely coup almost, that whilst the Met show was on in New York celebrating the life of Alexander Lee McQueen and everything that he'd done, his collections, she designed the dress for, you know, the Princess of Wales, and I think that was really amazing, kind of to show that both of them were relevant, her so relevant now and for that moment, and he's so relevant in the legacy and the history of McQueen and what he'd done. And I thought that was quite nice, probably by accident. I don't, you know, how much can you plan that? Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, I've met her, but I mean, only when I was working in the archive, and she's really shy.
Yeah, I want to ask you about working in the archive, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Tell us about working in the archive. That must have been the most amazing experience ever.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing, and it was complete.
What were you doing? Like,
so,
we've got our champagne ready for the story. We're like,
story time. Probably going to get sued. How much am I allowed to say? Well, a team of us, when they announced that they were doing the Met show, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so the Costume Institute, Harold Coder and Andrew Bolton, said, well, we really need to know what's in the archive. And the McQueen archive, quite famous, you know, there's famous stories about bin bags and, you know, things just piled on top of each other. And I think, you know, we've spoken about this in previous panels before, like people are becoming really savvy about their archives now. I think, you know, Christopher Kane has an archive, and people are much more kind of, they're aware of their legacy almost, and I think that's great as someone who works in exhibitions. Thanks, that's great if you could look after things for us until we'd like to borrow them. So they asked a team of us to archive the collection so that they knew what was there, and we were really under pressure because it was a hugely quick turnaround. The Met always does that, you know, one a year, and they announce it, and I don't think, when they announce it, I don't think they've known for very long that that's what they're going to do. Whereas V&A or something would work, you know, 3-4 years in advance. So we were really, you know, we were quick, and we had to get everything photographed and catalogued, and then we had to measure it and the condition reports. And for me, I'm going to be honest, I knew nothing about McQueen. I remember getting a book, like going to Foyles and getting a book. And thinking, oh my God. And now I look at this book and actually there's credits wrong. You know, and I'm now like, oh yeah, you know, that's not the right season. But I think it was all hands on deck, and we knew nothing, and we were working with Trino, and she was amazing. She'd been in the company for 18 years. She'd been there forever, and she just knew it. She knew it like the back of her hand. And so we relied on her and Olivier, who's the archivist, to say, that's what that is, that's what that is, and just almost feed us collections to take pictures of. And we started with the last one, and we worked back to the whatever was left of the really early collection. It was just amazing to see the progression, but really for me it was a huge learning curve. I knew nothing about that period of fashion, and now knowing about that as I just feel like it's a foundation to reference everything else in that time. Hipster trousers, the bumsters, and you'd see high street trends I'd have been wearing as a teenager, and I would think he started that. That's incredible, and you know, so much darkness, and I got obsessed with his referencing of birds, and the themes are endless. And what the Met show did was really an amazing capture of all his collections and his themes. But you know, there's about 300 exhibitions in his work. You know, you could keep going.
I'm gutted that I never saw it. Did you see it?
Why do you think there is such a public sort of thirst for what he does? It's more than a thirst, though, isn't it? Because the public seem really moved by it. People seem to just, it's something that he does sparks a light in everyone. What do you think it is, that emotion?
I think there's such an energy there, and it's an undeniable energy, and it's so powerful, it's so beautiful, it's so dark.
So dark.
It's got everything in there. It touches all your senses.
It's very emotive response, isn't it? Very visceral.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I don't use this word very often, but total genius.
And I think you can understand it on so many different levels. Just be aesthetically beautiful, and I think was something like the exhibition that captured so many people's imaginations, and people queuing. The museum closed on a Monday, every Monday it's always closed, and they opened it up and sold tickets to special members and things. It was incredible. And in the game of exhibitions, that's just what you've always dreamed of.
Has it changed? I think I'm interested in how it's changed exhibiting culture. Do you find that after Savage Beauty that there's actually across the board much more of a public thirst for fashion exhibitions?
I mean, I hope so, but I think it's always great. We just closed Valentino, so it closed on Sunday. We had over 100,000 visitors to Valentino, and that's for Somerset House. That's amazing for us.
Can you sneak in? Because
I mean, we're plummeting through the takedown.
Is it still up?
No, so it's taken down.
So sorry.
From this day forth.
But yeah, I think I hope so. I don't know. I think it was amazing. I don't know why. Would it be the wedding dress, or was it that American audience had never considered something to be so dark yet beautiful? I don't know. Maybe that's not giving them enough credit. But it was people from, Illinois travelling. It wasn't just New Yorkers who are very cultural and, they know what's going on.
But I think also he transcended this thing where you don't necessarily have to have a huge love for fashion. It's a beautiful aesthetic, it's theatre, it's just something absolutely intrinsically put together and crafted, and the talent is there. I just kind of feel it's not necessarily, oh my god, I'm so into fashion, I love fashion, I have to go and see it. It's sort of, people have heard of McQueen who've got nothing to do with the fashion industry, and I just think that's an incredible thing to have achieved.
And in its darkness and its intensity, there is also an accessibility to it, which is, I think, the genius of it.
I think that comes from him. He was a real, I hate to say, but an East London lad, and he never had the lofty sort of, he didn't like that up your own bomb pretension. He liked that realness, and as you say about touching every sense, it is about being flawed, and we're all flawed, and it is about, he was sensitive, and we can see that. He was radical, and we all want to be a bit radical. He was rebellious. Every part of the human psyche he put across in his work. And so even if you're not a huge fan of fashion, but you're a creative person or a sensitive soul, or whatever your makeup, there's still something in there that will spark a little flame in you.
It's very endearing qualities.
And his referencing of history was just incredible. And what he would find inspiration in was the most unlikely, back to my obsession with the birds, but he would sit on the top of his high-rise East London council estate block, and he would watch the birds, and that's where he got inspiration from, using birds within fashion. I think it was just incredible where he found beauty, and I think everyone can relate to that, especially city dwellers. We're not living in a country where everything looks so green and fresh, and I think he was very, as you said, it comes from him being an East Ender, and how that translates. We can all relate to these. He wasn't snobbish about it. He was never pretentious.
And I'd like to talk a little bit, you mentioned it, I thought it was so telling when you said, like the hipster trousers and then the bumpsters, and I'd like to talk on his influence on fashion, because people talk of him very aptly in these very high terms of his visionary genius, but I think also the meat and potatoes of what he did has had such a huge influence on the way we dress. Do you notice that in kind of the trends that you're writing about on a day-to-day level?
Yeah, but I think it's all about form. So with him, it's quite the basic ideas of silhouette and form and power that obviously people, Azadine Alaya, and there are other designers also who work to that sort of template, but you'll never, she's not a girl, she's a woman. You'll always see either her waist or her shoulders. She's not going to wear anything boxy and that disguises her female form. So I think that just by having such a clear and erudite grasp of those ideas of proportion, form and silhouette, he has undoubtedly influenced everything since. And
do you find there's still a real thirst? Do you find that it's one of the, it is one of those brands where if you feature a product by it, or if you write about something that Sarah's doing, is it something that women still really sort of completely are obsessed with?
Yeah, I mean, we have our reader is a thinking woman, and it's a woman who knows fashion, who understands it, is clever with it, and is quite discerning. And as you say, it's about a woman, and it's quite not hard to find, but not every designer speaks to a woman. They speak to girls a lot of the time.
It's apt that you say speaks to a woman, especially in the context of this season where Sarah Burton made that pragmatic decision and said, I'm in the midst of having a baby. I'm going to, at relatively short notice, said I'm going to scale this back. We're not going to do a show. We're going to do a presentation. And often people mention when Phoebe Philo did that, when she took some time off, took a break. That must be really positive to see, because people make a lot of criticisms of the pace of the fashion industry. It was really apt when he was saying, how busy everyone is. So do you think that that's another sort of strength to her, that the reality that's the message that sends of, you can't do it all?
Well, I don't know. I think it's just an individual's choice rather than being a comment on how women function in the workplace. If that's what she wants to do, and if that's what she feels right for her and her family at this stage in their life, then that's totally what she should do. And there will be other designers who don't choose to do that. So it's whatever, that comes down to personal choice, I think.
Should we have a look at what's on offer for this season? So it's a really, really small set of looks, and it's inspired by sort of high church, cardinals, popes and angels, it's her bid to be the next pope. That's a really bad joke, I'm sorry. So there are only about 10...
Or to dress the next pope, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. God, I just thought it was totally regal. I didn't see that sort of pope or papal sort of religious, just looking through. It looked more like, coronation gown. Yeah.
Well, someone tweeted earlier, they were like, when Kate gets coronated, can't she wear this? They to me look like, it's almost like that Elizabethan. Well, the rush,
Elizabethan, that's exactly what I think when I look at it.
That Elizabethan
collar. Yeah, exactly, and the collar.
It's quite nice to see the masks. I mean, I don't know, Guido did.
Is it beaded?
Yeah, but usually the last few seasons, I mean, obviously he loved masks, and Sarah sort of continued that theme, but they're not entirely covered. There's some air and light in there. Exactly, it's quite delicate.
But that's where it was interesting when we were talking before about the people who credit her with bringing the femininity, and beyond the C collection that she did, it is details, like a lot has been made, how she's cut those sharp shoulders that he did, but even things like making the face slightly more visible, and there's all that slight softer touches to it, which I find such beauty in that. I think it's incredible.
Well, the ruff is Highland Rape collection, McQueen, which was a really important collection, and then the stomacher is a bit like McQueen at Givenchy, always had these kind of big metal belts. Yeah. And as you said, it's just soft and it's nods, and also that keyhole cut above the bustier, that's very McQueen. But I think it's so different though. It's almost like the way a fashion designer would reference art or history. That's the way she references his legacy. She uses those kind of tools and then creates something new. I think it's really quite amazing.
I think, there must have been a lot of her within McQueen's work as well.
Yeah,
the feminine side must have really come through, because he entrusted her with the work, so she would have had some kind of say in it. So I think that's also why it flows through.
It feels so organic, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think she's trusting her instincts because he trusted her instincts.
Absolutely.
Her
she must. I think that's a really good point, because Lee wasn't an easy person, and he certainly wasn't an easy person to work with by all accounts. And she must have been a very, very, very special person to have stayed that, that long time with him. Very strong, and would have known when to make a move, when not to make a move, because I think someone else could have been totally intrusive in his work, but she was obviously the perfect person. Because I imagined, I imagine one day to have a Sarah. Please find me wherever you are. And this would be absolutely awesome, but it would also be a very difficult job for them to do, because when I visualise something, it's so strong, there isn't really room for anyone else, because people have often said to me, I'll come and help you, and I'm like, I'll see you after the show, because I go through all these emotions, and I believe that would have been the same with Lee, because it's not to sit and draw it and hand it over to someone to make it. As you throw the things round, things emerge, and I imagine that's the similar thing with him. And these things just take shape, and if somebody else is there, that can get in the way. I mean, I can't even have music on when I'm actually in this place where it's like someone else is taking over, and it really is like that. It's like I go some crazy place, and it's like it's leading me, and to have someone else there would break it all. But if they were in tune, then it would take it to another level, and they must have been so in tune.
I guess it's so apt what you say, because I think we've all talked about the darkness and the sensitivity of that work, and it did. When there was all that dispute of who was going to sort of take over, people agitated a lot about it, and you kind of think that the depth of the emotion in those, because it would have been impossible for someone else to come in, and
I agree.
You never know, but I can't imagine anyone else could have had anywhere near the same levels of success, because it doesn't feel like there are many other houses that have, and this isn't a criticism of their aesthetic, but that have such darkness and such emotion in them, and it's very rare for that. Should we see the next look?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the shoulder's quite interesting, because we've seen a lot of the shoulder so far. This at Prada, it's all about the shoulder. This is about shoulders.
And playing with proportions as
but
well.
It's that new kind of different areas of a woman have become, important in fashion, and I think that's something like the shoulder. And a lot's been made of the skirt length. It's interesting to see designers play, and that's another element of femininity, I think.
It's like the cold shoulder, it's called. Donna Karen, the shoulder never gets fat.
The shoulder never gets fat.
It's an acceptable
The shoulder never gets fat.
You might as well get it out.
That's what they say about couture. Was that what we were saying in the couture panel? That's okay.
Shoulder, she calls it the cold shoulder.
So what is this? Is this beaded on top of that?
I think they're pearls.
Yeah, it looks like it, because that's in feel with. It is a very Elizabethan.
And you probably know more archive-wise.
You're a reference point now.
Yeah, it looks like. This is that armour thing again, maybe, and that sort of fencing. Because he always loved that fencing aesthetic.
Well, his quote was, "I dress women for battle." So if you see the first two looks, can you imagine someone on the battlefield? Not really, but you can in this. And I think tailoring was the most important thing for Lee McQueen, and I think she's taken that, and she's honourable, and I think that's it's beautiful, beautiful tailoring, but it's different from how he would have
It's very simple as well.
I like the armour detail.
It's beautiful.
There's a sense of empowerment, though. You can't put that on without feeling empowered.
Yes.
We have to stay on this look for a while. And do you think, in a way, I was thinking about this before, it's actually really refreshing to see just 10 looks. It's something, I think it's the pace of Paris and the pace of the whole season, but when the looks are as strong as this, you only need 10. Obviously I'd welcome more, because it's incredible, but it's a real treat. Is that right,
that Chanel had 80?
Yeah, 80.
80 looks. How do you have that many ideas?
How do you have that many ideas? How do you have that much time?
Well, I think they repeated some of the models.
Sorry?
They repeated some. They must have had to.
Yeah, so you can after doing two. Oh
wow.
So Elizabethan.
Yeah, very.
But I think that's what I love, the Britishness of it, because even though it's in Paris, I don't know, it gets me excited because it's got that sort of
underlying
British pride.
It does look like
it's
it's battle with all those what do you call those things? Because I remember I did a collection called Warrior Queen, and I did this, and I called it Little Battle Dress, and it had those little, I don't know where it came from, it was just something in my head, but it's got that battle feel. Yeah,
it's like the turrets on the top of a castle.
Yes, it's exactly that's it. In fact, no, that's what I called it, the little castle. I can't remember monster. But yeah,
I always have a good time looking at the McQueen collections because you imagine how that's going to sort of be diffused down into something that will then be sort of sold. And if you look at the skirt that we were on before, you can imagine that actually being incredibly beautiful.
And
buyers will be very happy.
That shape. The next one's like Boudica, isn't it?
That's amazing.
Absolutely, that is sensational.
Yeah,
that would look brilliant on Kate Blanchett.
Literally, you don't know where to look, do you? It just completely overtakes the senses.
I'm intrigued by the tighting, the hosiery here.
The chainmail.
Yeah.
It does seem to be a lot more
Is that going to be translated in... Are we going to see fishnets coming back as a result of it?
Well, we did see those lovely embellished tights at Saint Laurent.
I think a fishnet will go on forever.
I do quite like a fishnet with
Well, chainmail was big for McQueen as well. It's almost like a retake on Joan of Arc collection. And I think it's so different though. It's so nice to see her getting her own motifs. Maybe we should stop looking at what he did and think that
I think we should just think of it as what he did, because it was a great point you made about, you know, it was what she did as well.
So it is a continuation. And it will eventually. Yeah.
And she needs time as well. You know, these things don't happen overnight. Do they? She needs, you know, time to. Oh, they're so accomplished. They're incredible.
I think that is a really good point about the commerciality of it. I mean, if you look on Net-a-Porter, for example, at the moment, there's maybe sort of 4 or 5 quite wild dresses, but the rest are the scarves, accessories, leggings, t-shirts. So much of it is distilled into accessible sort of wearable pieces now. You know, how Lee would have felt about that, I don't know, because maybe...
But it's women wanting to buy into the McQueen world, isn't it? Which stands for...
lipstick.
Exactly, but it just stands for empowerment, you know.
I'm just wondering what's on her fingers there. Is it gloves?
They've got these demi gloves that stop
that looks
about
cool.
there. So they're just the kind of fingers, and then some of them had pearls running along them.
Oh, really?
They are absolutely incredible,
isn't it? Carly Kloss.
Yeah, I think
Amazing.
God, good recognition skills there.
She is my favourite. So this is like total royal court stuff, isn't it, really? Like Snow Queen.
Absolutely.
Well, it is Elizabeth.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
But the feathers, again, you know, it's back to those signatures, but in such a... I really wish that had been the royal wedding dress. People got more excited.
I think that combination idea is spot on.
But you can see that, you know, actually if those sleeves were sort of tweaked, you can see that on red carpets. Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely.
These collections, they always seem to be about potential, you know, whether it's the commercial potential or the potential for it to sort of be worn.
This is no hold barred.
I think actually what's on the shoulders and the bustier, it's quite difficult to see. I don't know if it's made of metallic pieces or whatever, but I think that with just like removing the sleeves and removing this and having something soft, a soft chiffon or something, which she's very, very good at, would actually make a fabulous Oscar-winning dress. Something like that.
And it's interesting that you mentioned Net-a-Porter because they do sell some of those, you know, the £12,000 McQueen gowns as well.
And actually it's an interesting case study for a brand, you know, retailing it at this current time is it's really sort of entry point to the very top. So it'll be those sort of 12k show pieces, but also a pair of sunglasses, you know, it's brand extension, a lesson in, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the sort of open commerciality of things like the scarves, it's let them get to the point where this collection, you know, we just want to be wowed. You know, no one actually cares about it being super commercial. You just want to see, because if you can do this, why show anything that's commercial?
And I think that's, I mean, we say about, you know, she shouldn't feel forced to carry on the legacy of the theatre and the big, you know, the high-octane productions.
She probably wants to. You can feel
there's
that.
Something in it that
she's
you know,
loving
it's
the
got
theatrics.
You know, it's got
but I feel like she pulls that all back onto the clothes. You know.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can see that you're looking at it and you're like, well, she's recreating a silhouette. You know, it's empowering. It's like cinched in at the waist.
But there certainly is space on the schedule for
the next.
Well, I don't know, just for some, you know...
Well, I just remember how excited everyone got in London, you know, for the men's when we'd all... kind of treks from that basement of the hospital club, to that big concrete show space, and it was amazing. Everything we saw, I love the men's. It was incredible, but to go somewhere and to be wowed and to, it freaked me out. You're in this room with your back against the wall, and these models came in with perspex masks, walking through, and you couldn't tell which room they were going to go, and it was really scary. And everyone came out and was like, "That was brilliant! It was amazing!" And to be kind of moved.
Was it just recently?
Yeah. It was the last season. The men's. Right. It was grand. It was really, really good.
What I was going to say there, the actual bustier, do you know actually what that's made of?
I don't.
Because it's got the feel of the prints that Lee did for the
Plato's Atlanta.
Yeah. It's got that, but it looks like it's probably something more solid than it's not just.
It looks like
embellishment.
It does, yeah.
Oh wow.
So this reminds me kind of the feathers or from the underwater collection.
Yeah,
she did those sort of the big
and they were so popular as well, so it's nice to see her sort of reference stuff that she's sort of really had success with.
Yeah, so maybe this is sort of one of her signatures.
And you can imagine these pieces moving, and I love the contrast of how those feathers must have looked as they walked through that show space compared to how those more structured armour-like
Yeah,
looked.
absolutely.
It's incredible.
Oh wow.
I love that.
I've changed my mind. I want that to be the royal wear.
Do you know what? I was just thinking the same thing. That is sensational.
But wouldn't you just want her legs as well?
Yeah, all of it. I'll have all of it.
I'll take it all. Yeah, no, that's
and that footwear is incredible as well.
It certainly is.
You couldn't really wear them in the rain, could
No.
you?
Oh, that'd be so sad. That's such a
damp.
Yeah, a little dead
Taxi to table dress.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the last lick. Yeah, that's the last
That's
lick.
it. Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But you kind of think, I could look at this till the cows come home, but you also think, you don't need to see more with her. She could have showed us one of those dresses and no one would question how talented, how skilled and how...
But also
the
I
thing
do
is
think it... Oh, sorry, go on, Pam.
Just saying, there's so much more, because you're talking about the brand and how she has to do some commercial things. So you can see, things really coming from that. It's very compact and very, very beautiful. But from that, if she wishes, she can easily take...
It's like when the idea is right, it can be sort of manifested in so many different ways.
That can move on somewhere else.
I think it takes huge courage, strength and intelligence just to show, a 10-piece collection. It's like writing a short letter. It's a lot easier to waffle and go on and on and on. So just to make it concise, I think actually shows
So how long has she been pregnant? Did she know, before?
She's had twins, right?
Yeah, twins. And the announcement was made relatively last minute. I can't remember exactly, but it was only a few weeks or something.
In January
she obviously
we knew
knew,
that
so
she
she would
was
have been prepared.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, it's like, okay, now coming back next season, this is actually quite a nice platform because you've got a lot of scope to, go one way.
Actually,
and
that's
you know
so
what?
true.
I think she probably needs a break.
Yeah.
She must.
Taking on that legacy.
She needs a break. Which, having 2 kids now, she's not going to get that break in that sense. But I think, this must have been incredible for her to do all this, and then have the wedding dress on top, and it's endless. So I think she deserves a break.
To produce this level, at this level, is incredible.
It's so apt that you said that now because I am so excited for next season.
Because this is like a really nice base for her.
Yeah.
It's kind of, scale it back, quite pure collection. It's a decadent space, but it's not, as we've talked about, huge production values. And then next season, she'll come back and...
We're eagerly awaiting.
We're anticipating, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Maybe she'll come back with a theatre. You never know,
Or she'll have a
I
break
always wait
to think
for
about
her
it.
to do that.
To think about it, get a chance. You should rest with her new kids first. Yeah, enjoy that.
Should we give her a clap to wrap
yes.
things up? Wish her well on her break.
Well done, Sarah.